This is a fan-generated show. If you'd like to support us, please go to jamieglazov.com. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our new Rumble channel. All your support is greatly appreciated.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm thrilled to announce the release of my new book, Obama's True Legacy: How He Transformed America. There's a reason why Mike Huckabee calls it a ferocious and chilling read. Order it now at Amazon.com or at FrontPageMag.com. Thank you, and may God bless you. Good evening. Welcome to the Glazov Gang. What an honor and privilege this evening to have with us Judd Dunning, the author of 13 and a Half Reasons Why Not to Be a Liberal. He's a Newsmax regular columnist, and he's the host of the show Unapologetic, the Judd Dunning Hour on KABC AM 790. Judd, real honor to have you here.
Thank you. You can call me Judge. I judge everything around me. That's my main quality.
Fantastic. Judd, a lot going on. Why don't we start with Hunter Biden? So much coming out now, but let's just follow the timeline. Let's start at least, well, I don't know about the beginning, but in the middle here. He gets probation now for $1 million in tax evasion. Wow. And then for a gun charge. Now, we know what would have happen to the average citizen. Let's just talk about this plea deal he made. What do you think of it?
Well, I think we've got to keep our eye on the bigger picture, because that's what the left does. It's a 24-hour news cycle. They're going to try to cycle us out of our awareness by barraging us with different information, regardless of what the bottom line is. And there's going to be a lot of talk about whether or not, this is vengeance because of Trump, as we saw Walsh Freedom talking about. But the truth is, it's still what Marco Polo put into action in their 634-page report. There's 459 crimes that are allegedly by Hunter, and about 7 major crimes by Joe Biden. And the big 3, right, that we saw was the tax evasion. We had the use of federal registration for a gun while under use of cocaine. Then you've got, they call it money laundering or influence peddling, but it's really unregistered lobbying with influence that later becomes his father's crime. And the other thing that's going on that's not even being addressed, that I feel outrage about, is it's sex trafficking. It's sex trafficking. There's 500,000 kids and young adults that are sex trafficked in America every day. He has taken prostitutes across state lines, some the age of his daughter. So there's a series of events that are going on. And what's amazing to me is how silent the left and the Me Too movement is on when it's taking out their own to shift power. They don't care. The progressives will use people, blacks, transgenders, Mexicans, women, if they can keep power. There should be an outrage just about his laptop drop and all the women that he abused and all the nudity in there and all the exploitation and degradation of women. So how do I feel about the first charge? I hope it's the beginning of many. I'm sure we're going to continue through the timeline, but the greater picture is darker, and it shouldn't matter what Trump did or what else is going on. It's about doing what's right in this moment.
Thank you, Judd. What kind of a person is Hunter? Like, what is he involved in here? Like, all of this information, who is this guy? Why is he involved in all of these things?
Well, I think the thing that this generation is dealing with versus my generation, Gen X, is there's now a contamination of the left and the right. So you have to remember, they're saying, why wasn't the laptop actually pursued? Well, there's a reason. There's a very clear reason. We're not talking about it enough, is that the people intricated in this laptop and who Hunter is, many of them are on the right. Many of them on the right. So if you're wondering why the march toward the cancellation of the Biden family just on the laptop, is because there are elites on the left and the right. And this generation sadly sits there. And what is he? He's an elite. And how do you know we have an elite class? Because the Potomac, on the Versailles and the Potomac, the actual group of people never go to jail. They say, if you want to test the health of a republic, how many people at the top go to jail? Very few. And hunter is clearly within the elite. They're a family for, generations since young Biden ran, and he's protected class. He's also a drug addict. And he's been contaminated by, I guess, when you use the old school words, he's been contaminated by sin and privilege.
Yeah, and there's something Jeffrey Epsteinish about this. In terms of Ghislaine Maxwell, we still don't have that client list. Something about also Anthony Weiner's laptop. And just this laptop in general, it's very, well, it's not surprising and shocking, but for normal human beings, this is shocking in the sense of that why do we know so little about this laptop? And so definitely a cover-up, but as you're saying, perhaps there's a lot to hide, not just by Hunter, but by a lot of other people and people who might be on the conservative side, right?
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what Mel Brooks, the wrong gender, Mel Gibson's new movie is about, right? The Sound of Freedom is just dropping, which is about sex exploitation in the United States. It's coming out from Operation Underground Railroad. So, we don't want to, there's a bastardization anytime anyone calls out the sexual nature of people at the top. We get thrown out, we get called crazy or conspiratorial. People with power, if they get disconnected from God, this is my theory. If you get disconnected from God, you become competitive. If you become competitive, you don't trust the universe provides for you, don't trust God. And then in the sexual realm, if you get disconnected from God, you get disconnected from good. And when you have disconnected power and disconnected sexuality, people can start to distort about their mortality and their power and their attractiveness. And it sounds like to me that there's a pretty dark ring of people in power who have gotten connected to being aberrant in their sexuality. Well, guess what? The Constitution is about our sexuality. So we say, oh, that's okay. And if you go all the way back to when Clinton lied about Monica Lewinsky, and we rationalized that, and then he apologized, he came back. Now today, at some level, it's like, hey, what you do in the bedroom is private. But it's not. This is the highest office, the highest family. There's a sanctity. The world is watching. Biden has been such an mumbling elite. He's been so horrible with Afghanistan, so horrible with COVID, so horrible with so many elements of our economy, not really caring about people, shutting down oil, punishing Americans, that the world is watching America right now. Like, how are we going to relate to this laptop? What is going to happen to Hunter in this situation? So I think it's more important than we think. And what matters, and this is a kind of a stretch for me, but I don't think it matters what happens. I think it matters how does the House of Representatives, controlled by Republicans, continue to march toward impeachment, toward every investigation. Regardless of what happens, we have to do the right thing, even if the system is broken, for us to execute and complete it.
Thank you, Judd. Just want to spend just a little bit more time on this sex trafficking thing. It's just interesting of everything that our media focuses on. And Anthony Weiner's laptop, we know so little. Apart from just general in passing references to Hunter Biden, maybe, obviously on Newsmax and on places that tell the truth still. But, on CNN, MSNBC, we're not going to hear that much. But, I've wondered over the years, like once in a while I'll be watching the news and they'll say, oh, there was a bust and they found, 100 children in this sex trafficking slave camp. The FBI got them. And then that's it. And I'm just like, whoa, wait a minute. And they just refer to it for 20 seconds and then it's over. And I'm always wondering, where is the 1 hour, 2 hour program of who these children were, who stole them, how were they brought here, did these people flip, who did they reveal? It's very interesting and a bit sobering and telling how they just reference even these stings, but they never ever get into it or tell us too much. Have you noticed that?
Absolutely. And I'm going to get biblical for a moment, if I may. Matthew 18:6. If anyone causes one of these little ones, those who believe in me, to stumble, it would be better for them to have a large millstone hung around their neck and to be drowned in the depths of the sea. So we're a Judeo-Christian constitutional society. And in it, we have a couple examples, like the flipping over of the tables by Christ when we defiled the sacred, right? And the other one is children. There's very few calls for like really strong rebuke or really calling out. And we're getting farther and farther and farther away from that. I mean, I think I agree with you. Many high-profile individuals knew of Epstein's exploitation of underage girls and provided children as service to friends and associates years before he was charged. In Hollywood, there's been sex cults, sex parties. It's not uncommon, and yet there's silence. So you're absolutely correct. I think this is a bellwether moment for us to get out there and punish Biden, Hunter. But I'm just not even seeing it.
Yeah. There's some kind of force from on top which suffocates and negates any kind of spotlight on what's happening to children. And you're absolutely right. Jesus reserved one of his greatest warnings for those that harm children. And we know that Satan is very, very much focused on child sacrifice. He hates the innocence of children. And when we look at Islamic Jihad, when we look at Hitler and Stalin, when we look at these totalitarian regimes now, when we look at what's happening with this trans ideology of these drag queens, they don't dance in front of senior citizens at old age homes. They target children. So evil is very, very focused on the innocence of the innocence that children represent, because I think we could make the argument that that's God's innocence, and the devil hates innocence so much. But definitely a child sacrifice going on here in the spiritual war, right?
Oh, absolutely. I love it. I love what you're saying. It's a child sacrifice in the spiritual sense, regardless of what people are saying about in the physical, which I'm sure the physical is happening as well. I mean, we know. Look, the 500,000 kids being trafficked, a big thing. This is what Tucker was talking about right before he got removed. He was saying, is there a collusive element to the trafficking of the open border and bringing children to the United States that are going into, trafficking to be used for sexuality or work purposes? I mean, they're saying in multiple sources that the open borders are serving a dual agenda. That's so dark. We don't even want to think of it. People would say, oh, Judd, you're a radical. I'm a rationalist. I'm just watching different points. And this is really happening. And then full circle to bring it back to what you're talking about, and thank you for bringing me on, is what's going on with Hunter and the 2 misdemeanor counts for his tax matters. They said that $11 million actually went through his hands. And then recently they also said that they were holding it up. It just came on Breitbart like a couple hours ago too. It was a great read. Hunter Biden demanded in 2017 he be paid by a CCP-linked Chinese businessman, Henry Zhao, while Joe Biden was sitting next to him, asking that he had in order to get capital. And what we've tracked about this situation is there were a number of oligarchs in trouble in the Eastern Bloc. And what they would do is call up the Bidens and give them from $50,000 to $250,000 a month, up to $11 million, to remove the justice system that freed them in their area by using American influence in other countries to remove their DOJ, to contaminate their DOJ. I mean, this is what we're going to see. I think what we're going to see, we're seeing a federal income tax slap on the wrist, and then we're seeing a pretrial diversion agreement with his gun defense, right, buying that Colt Cobra despite being drug addicted. So they're going to try to wash it under the rug tomorrow. That's exactly what we know they're going to do. They're going to say, oh, he suffered a little bit and this is enough. Now, I think that the octopus is coming out of the small hole. We're going to see and hopefully in a just and moral society, it will lead back to Joe Biden.
Let me just one more point, and then we'll get into all these important details you're talking about. Just my own even confusion with this whole Hunter thing and the kids. So now and again, we'll be on Twitter, we'll be somewhere, and we just see this picture, and it's Hunter, and there's a child, and then they block out the face of the child or whatever. They'll say, this is on Hunter's laptop. And sometimes I think, okay, just wait, is this real or is this not real? And then we just scroll down and we start looking at something else now. And I'm just wondering, you know, Anderson Cooper brought on Stormy Daniels, and he was really getting to the bottom of whether there was a condom or not, and he was doing his job as an investigative reporter. But you would think that if there's a child, if that's a real picture, you know, you would think that Anderson Cooper and Rachel Maddow, the media, would get involved in this. Can we please confirm whether this is really a real picture or not? And let's confirm that. And if it is, why is there SWAT teams coming in early morning raids to Roger Stone's house, this 70-year-old man, for something that he wrote on an email or something, whatever that was? Shouldn't this guy be already in jail if those pictures are real?
So the Biden campaign panned it as the report. There was an 87-page report that came out specifically on Hunter's ties to the Ukraine and to a sex trafficking ring. And they've been calling a long disproven hardcore right-wing conspiracy theory as disgraceful. But then if you go into his laptop drop on Marco Polo, and I want to, you know, everybody go to Marco Polo, go look at the recent drop and go through the pictures, make your own call. But a lot of these, if some of these girls aren't younger than 18, they're definitely right on the edge of 18. And this is where a lot of this most nefarious activity takes, is in this category, this team.
Wait, Judd, tell our viewers what you mean by Marco Polo for those that might not know.
Sure. Marco Polo is an NPO that took a cadre of just dozens of people and has gone deeply, just go Marco Polo Biden laptop, has gone deeply into everything that was on the laptop. Now, the way the laptop went out, there were clones. They did a 634-page report, and there were clones that went out. And by the way, you know where I saw him speaking? You're not seeing the head of Marco Polo speaking in America. I saw him speaking on Australian TV, because even Fox doesn't want to run the elements of how bad the sex trafficking element of this. And this is one of his biggest claims. He's like, what are we doing?
So Tucker was getting too close, I think. He was narrowing in on the Kennedy assassination and the CIA. He was narrowing in on January 6th. He was narrowing in on the vaccines. All this stuff you're not allowed to talk about. And then I guess at Fox News, as you're saying, what's happening to children and the laptop and sex trafficking, they also want to stay away from that. If the leaders in this country and the leaders of our media do not want to examine or look into the trafficking and sexual abuse of children, this is a very scary, telling thing, isn't it?
Well, I think absolutely. I think the biggest issue is I don't have specific ages of the people involved with Hunter, but I will tell you something on this. I don't know where this will go, and we have something going on, but we have a family member who was approached through Instagram and a few years ago, and for sex trafficking and drug purposes, young child. And we were able to get involved and free 14 other families' girls here in Los Angeles from a normal home in a normal neighborhood with no trauma in these homes. There is a cadre of very bad people, like 1 million. There's supposedly right now there's about 1 million people with sexual violations now on the internet that are exposing our children, that are looking for children, that are looking for the people that people are going to overlook. So, you know, I don't know what's going to happen with that piece. I do know that we made the most progress that we have under President Trump. You know, he actually, he did some of the best work about human and sex trafficking. And be honest, I think the left, they're more in love with control than taking care of people that are actually, I do not think they really care about the trans society. I don't think they really care about the black community. I don't think they really care about immigrants. They care about power, because right now, the Me Too movement would be vociferously on fire, really getting the last dump of Hunter Biden. And then for Joe to come out the next day and go, I'm proud of my son. I go, you're proud of your son for what? For all the naked pictures of his genitalia while smoking crack with 20-year-old girls or 18-year-old girls or children, prostitute, bringing people across the line, everything he did with money trafficking, all the manipulation, everything he's done with crack cocaine. I mean, it's why isn't there outrage from a normally healthy moral society? And I mean, healthy is a good word for us because it's not about your agenda or my agenda. It's about what is good, just, and true for a home. Politics are personal. So our nation is a house.
Judd, you know, it can get so disheartening. I always hold on to Jesus telling us when the world hates you, always remember it hated me first. That there will be, you know, that Satan does roam this earth and cause a lot of havoc. He has a lot of power and control during this particular timeline. But our Lord says, you know, the vengeance is his, and we know that the time will come when he will administer justice. So that gives us hope because, you know, during a time like this, and of course throughout history, but during a time like this, it's very disheartening to see so much evil and so much injustice. And we just pray that, you know, that we can see a little bit of justice, at least on some levels. And I think that's why they hated Trump so much and hate him so much. They're terrified of him because he is blocking this agenda, and also he's a big threat to exposing this agenda. But Judd, let's just move here for a minute. So you mentioned it. Let's move on now. So we've got these IRS whistleblowers. So these are people that actually are working there. They're coming out and saying, hey, look, and they're telling us a couple things. And one of the things is that, as you've mentioned, Hunter is threatening this Chinese business partner, Henry Zhao, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. Okay, just let's even stop there for a minute. This is a Chinese Communist Party official. Peter Schweizer has confirmed this, and others. First of all, you know, I don't think too highly. I don't think we should think too highly of people who hang out with Nazis and do business with Nazis, people who get into business arrangements with the Ku Klux Klan. This Hunter is dealing with a guy that's interlinked with a regime that has killed 80 million of its own people and is one of the largest totalitarian regimes in the world today. Even that fact alone is telling, isn't it?
Well, absolutely. And if you understand why the Ukraine, right? The Ukraine, as you know, if you really understand World War II, it's where there was a lot of Nazi strongholds that were pulled back and then no longer included in the prior alliances in that area. So it has a real history with the influences of Nazism, which is really true. And it's crazy that we are in a obfuscated war in that area that's also fraught with high illegality and a history of corruption. And that's where they tried to even get Trump. And it's a very sticky, unclear area. And the way that we're standing by it right now, I think is deplorable. No, I agree with you 100%. I mean, I like to boil everything down to remove guns, remove the press, remove free speech, make the state God, and then, basically steal a society's soul. And you do that by murder. And we saw that in China, and we saw that with Stalin, and we've seen that throughout the world. And we are not that far from cultural Marxism to this day. And there's definitely a massive amount of real enemies for America. I just have to, sorry if this is a little obscure, but if you take the map of World War II and you look at the history of communism and the tensions that caused everything, if you take another map and you do a geopolitical analysis, the world is not better. We're actually not we're not in a kumbaya, closer place to utopianism. We're actually in a very shattered, tense, brittle world peace held in place by nuclear power, a detente, of course. Mm-hmm. So we're playing in the edges of communism wants to still destroy us. Russia, the wounded Russia still wants to destroy us. The Pan-Islamic State still wants to destroy us. Mm. The Southern American dictatorial oil cabal of socialism still wants to destroy us. So playing with our enemies, we have real enemies. There is no, greater place in modernity. We don't have enemies. It's really serious. And the Bidens and the Clintons, for that matter, really don't care. So what does that come down to? And what you're tapping into, right beside like Satanism or all the cultural Marxism or all the sin and everything, is globalism. Globalism is when your allegiance for money and power is no longer rooted in your nation. And these elites, they're globalists. They're more interested in power and amassing power than they are their great allegiance to America. You know, we are such an amazing country. We have still so many great qualities. So I think the Bidens are definitely intricated in some serious globalistic allegiances. And it's pretty sad when you're more loyal to something outside the United States than the United States when you're in a position of power.
Absolutely. A lot of wisdom right there, Judd. We're going to take a quick break and get a word from our sponsors.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell. Years ago, when I invented My Pillow, I was faced with every adversity you could think of. No retailers wanted to sell My Pillow. That's come full circle. Vendors took advantage of me, and I was copied by China. Well, by the grace of God, I was able to get through all that and learn from it. I have a passion to help other U.S. entrepreneurs, and that's why I created my new platform, mystore.com. We have hundreds of products from amazing entrepreneurs, and to celebrate, I'm going to put My Pillows on mystore.com right now. You can get my standard My Pillows regularly $69.98, now only $19.98 with your promo code. Or you can get my standard queen size, regular $79.98, now only $29.98. Or you can get my premium king size, regularly $89.98, now only $34.98. So go to mystore.com and use that promo code on your screen to get huge discounts on all My Store products. Thank you and God bless.
And we are back with the great Judd Dunning. Before our break, you were very much spelling out this threat of the evil globalism and how the Democratic Party and so many of our leaders are selling out to it. Just wanted to narrow in on something there, Judd, when you mentioned Ukraine and communism and just how just throughout the years, how sobering, sometimes I don't even know what words to use, it's very sobering learning more and more about how complicated things are and how tragic things are. Like, for instance, where do I begin to make this point? I'm the child of Soviet dissidents. Dad and Mom stood up against the Soviet regime. Communism is evil. I respect my parents very much. I'm the story of the child of immigrants from the communist world who loves America, wants to defend America against our enemies. It's that story, okay? So Putin is the extension of the Soviet horror, the evil empire, and he's evil. How much persecution he's still involved in with Navalny, what he did to Khodorkovsky. He represents the KGB. So we know that in the context of that war, we can never forget, we have to begin with the understanding of what Stalin did to the Ukrainian people, that forced famine, where they starved millions of Ukrainian people to death, and then all of the imperialism, all the persecution. So that's continuing, and we have to keep that in mind, that what Putin is doing to the Ukrainian people is horrible and evil, and we have to be on the side of the Ukrainian people. But then it becomes more complicated, as we know, because in terms of Klaus Schwab and in terms of Biden and all these characters in the World Economic Forum and how they're exploiting this war. And even though Biden is on the side of Ukraine, I don't think these people on that side really care about the Ukrainian people and want this war to end. These evil, nefarious globalist forces that are pretending that they're against Putin and want to help the Ukrainian people, there's other interests involved. They're actually prolonging this war, and there's something very complicated going on there, right?
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, one, it's very split within the Ukraine. It's very clear that there are Russian sympathetic Ukrainians and there are separatist Ukrainians. And when you go back to the history, which you were talking about, there was like 2.7 million Jews in Ukraine, and now there's 100,000. So that was real. The pogroms massacred that area. Like Putin's claims about wanting to go in and protect them are interesting, and we get aligned with that. But at the same time, Putin's also been a persecutor.
Yeah, and that's KGB. There's maybe a grain of truth, but that's KGB propaganda. But of course, there's grains of truth to some of this stuff.
Right. So he himself has been part of persecution. So it's really not that simple. The biggest thing is like the big thing for America, we don't really talk about it, was the Budapest Memorandum, right? And when in the 90s, I think 90s, when we backed out and we said, hey, if we back out and we'll pull back our the weapons, we will back you, just like we said in Vietnam, tank for tank, gun for gun. What happens? Liberals and conservatives rotate through Congress. We pull back our allegiances and we abandon allies. America does it. And in this situation, standing forward to honor some of our prior protectivism that was abandoned is one thing. Another thing is, though, like as we saw in our extraction in Iraq, is the presence that we make, the time that we spend, the time we retract. We can do more damage by protracted interventionism than we can by just supporting our allies. So I think at the very beginning, we like Trump said, and I think we all believe it, is Trump said, send me in here and I could settle this. And there, I don't think there's no payoff for Biden's, because why? One, you've got the Keynesian element of the left, right? It's like when you spend money, there's two ways to stimulate the economy. One is to cut taxes, stimulate growth, and the other one's to spend a lot of money, which in the short term appears to be stimulating the economy, trying to bring it back. So wartime presidents stimulate broken economies. So it pays for the left to stay involved in military action. It stimulates our economy, and that is the dark side of military interventionism. And you're not hearing a lot of that. But here's the thing that people never focus on, is that the left is the party of war. The right is not the party of war. They're the party of racism. They're the party of war. They're the party of giving up control. I mean, of taking too much control. So why would the left pull back when they're so weak on the surface? It gives them something to lean into. And I agree, they don't care.
Yeah, there's something so evil, like at one time growing up, I mean, of course, I'm still anti-communist, obviously. What I mean by this is in terms of the Vietnam War, I very much support that war effort to save South Vietnam from communism, to protect the South Vietnamese people from the North Vietnamese. But when you look closely, there's higher forces manipulating all these things. We're not saying that communism is not evil, it is not our enemy, but there's higher globalist forces that also, when you look at the Gulf of Tonkin and why maybe Kennedy was killed, there is this military-industrial complex at the same time which wants these wars, and then they protract them for years and years and years, and then they just pull out and give it to our vicious enemies. And we saw that in Vietnam. Who was really behind that war? And again, I stress, we know that it's a tragedy that the South Vietnamese people, fell under communism, and we know that, the North Vietnamese Viet Cong was evil, but there's higher forces on our side which were actually prolonging this and with not good intentions, and then they just abandon the people. We see this in Afghanistan. 20 years of that war. And, I used to think that the 9/11 truthers were crazy, but when you look more and more into it, buildings don't fall like that. There's a lot of evidence there, but if it was an inside job, and there's a lot of evidence to suggest that it was, it doesn't mean that Islamic Jihad is not real. It doesn't mean that Al-Qaeda is not our enemy and that they also weren't involved. It means that there's higher ups that are controlling these things and getting people to fight each other. And then at the very end, after they get their 20-year war and they're able to invade our civil liberties and they're manipulating our evil enemies as well, who do exist, then at the end they just pull out and give Afghanistan over to our enemy once again. There's something to this, right?
Oh, it's completely. It's interesting if you go back. The beauty, and we covered this in our book, might makes right, yes, but reluctant interventionism is usually the best way to go. In America, we do focus on protecting our security and our economic security when we have to. We will give preference to certain areas over that because that's survivalism. There's a certain element to that in the world. But America's track record is not bad. And as you mentioned, Vietnam, for those younger people watching your show, there was Vietnam Victory Day. We won, right? Everybody forgets. We actually strategically won Vietnam, and then the tank for tank, gun for gun was thrown out by the left, and we fell and destroyed a lot of people. The same thing happened in Iraq. And then Afghanistan was the most disgusting replication of the Vietnam crisis at the end by the Bidens. They really didn't care, and they also empowered the whole region. So,
and what I want to stress, sorry to interrupt, where it's so complicated is these are the people who are doing this are on our side. They're just not the good people, but they're ruling. So just at one time when I was a little bit more naive and blinded, at 9/11, I was very instinctively, no, it's not an inside job. It's not an inside job because Al-Qaeda really is real and Islamic Jihad really is real and, Islamic supremacism really is an enemy and we should never deny that. But I didn't understand at the time it's not mutually exclusive. The fact that we have communism and Islamic Jihad and Sharia as enemies does not mean that there's not higher globalist nefarious forces who are manipulating everything and getting self-interest out of causing these wars.
well, you know what the greatest proof of that would be? The degradation of the DOJ and the FBI.
Yeah.
I mean, in our lifetime, have you ever seen what we've seen in the last 7 or 8 years? Did we ever think that our justice system would openly, I mean, they just apologized for the Durham report, right? They just openly apologized for going after Trump and to go, you know what? That's like 6-page news. We just move into this cycle of now we're seeing wow, we have a real leftist cadre that influences justice. We have a bifurcated justice system. So my point is, if we can have a bifurcated domestic justice system, you bet we can have one everybody doesn't have our eyes on it 24/7. So I think there's a lot of good people out there fighting the good fight, but I think that big government is always the problem.
Absolutely. Judd, just with the time we have left, just let's get into some of these details again. Let's just get back to Hunter here for a minute. But it's so good to have discussions like this because this is the hook for us, the symbol to talk about all this whole cesspool of everything, So, okay, so he's sitting there and he's threatening a Chinese Communist Party official to hand over the money because I'm sitting here next to my dad. And this is according to a screenshot of a WhatsApp message from an IRS whistleblower. So look, this is illegal. What else could we say about this? Biden himself has said he had nothing to do with his son's business dealings, doesn't know anything about them, but yet he's sitting in a room while his son is threatening this Chinese business partner. Now, people can say, oh, no, he wasn't. No, he wasn't. Well, let's have an investigation then. But the investigation is blocked by the DOJ. Major corruption.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then they've got 10 held by H for the big guy. I mean, come on, we all weren't born yesterday. Public servants don't get to the value of where the Bidens have gotten to, right? I mean, they've got the assets, they've had layered commitments, they're doing everything they can to layer. But there's a cockiness about this, and hopefully the smoking gun is that his son's an addict. I happen to be 27 years sober. I would have been 37, but in the 80s, right? So I've been in this community for a long time, and as a result of that, we do this thing called a fifth step. And in a fifth step, you look at a life inventory, everybody's sexually, resentments, fears, and any nefarious acts, and you expose them to another human being. It was used by this group called the Oxford Group back in the 85 years ago for priests to clear themselves to work in the cloth, right? And that's where AA got some of its roots and from Carl Jung. So I've sat through life inventories again and again and again. I saw his laptop. I read the Marco Ruppolo reports. You've got a very corrupt person who's drifted into power. And what happens to human beings when they're spiraling in addiction and self-hate? They will source power and money and control. And you see, as Trump said, one of their biggest concerns is that Hunter was even corrupting his father. He's his right-hand man to this day. So it's obviously pretty serious, and he's proud of him, he said 2 days ago, and he signed off on it.
Other things the whistleblowers are telling us. Hunter's lawyers were notified by these forces out there from somewhere that the IRS had probable cause to search a storage unit associated with Hunter or with somebody there. We got to find out the details here, but they found out something. The IRS might come and search, and this gives Hunter the opportunity to go and remove materials from that location. Hugely unethical and illegal. Should be investigated who gave that heads up, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And they've already said that one of the whistleblowers in the Ukraine is no longer with us. So whistleblowing is pretty dangerous. Actually, I was just listening to this. I forgot who's speaking on this. I don't know if it was Matt to be, but it was that now whistleblowers. I think it was actually Jesse Waters. Whistleblowers now, the IRS is at your door right away. You face federal and civil prosecution. So whistleblowers are not even safe. So these people are heroes right now that are coming forward, particularly what we've seen with the threats of Jan 6th. So everybody who comes forth right now, has to really have themselves buffered in line. Who's protecting them? Is it the DOJ? Is it, who's protecting them? So I agree. I mean, there's no question for me that there's layer and layer of illicit activity. Here's the big question though. With Trumpism as such a violent association, see, the left uses four things: Trumpism, racism, climatism, and vaxism. There's four big shame devices that we use in our society right now to call other people bigots and unsophisticated red state people. So with all this saying, with Trumpism still hanging over so much, does Bidenism matter enough to go all the way through? Because people would say, it doesn't matter what Biden did. I can't have another Trump, because they've projected all this stuff on Trump, even though he had 385 major, achievements. So I think that's this two-tier justice system, this bifurcated justice system, is going to be a really serious issue.
Yeah. Judd, with the little time we have remaining, I just want to talk about you for a minute here. Were you always a Christian? Were you always a conservative?
No, I was always a Christian. I wasn't always a conservative. If you read my book, 13 and a half Reasons Why Not to Be a Liberal and How to Enlighten Others, which I think I just got a call from Head of Newsmax, just hit bestseller status. So that was positive. I got a call from the president. It was kind of a neat moment.
Excellent. Congratulations.
Yeah. My dad died and I wrote it in a cabin. I just had to get up there. And I wrote it for my kids because of moral relativism and moral absolutism. And what's good is good, what's true is true, love is love, what's beautiful is beautiful, justice is justice. There's nothing complicated to living a good life. It's not easy, but it's simple. So I grew up in a small southern town. My parents were from Miami, New York, and I had a stomach problem. So I had like 13 surgeries and 40 blockages. I died a couple times. And in the corner, there was this golden being, which was I saw as Christ. And it walked with me, so I knew I had a personal relationship with something beautiful. My kids were Jewish. I went to my pastor, 20 years now, my kids. And I said, what do? I got Jewish kids. And he said, hey, get over there and raise them Jews. The first covenant wasn't abolished. It was just amended. So I went to church and temple for 20 years. It was so beautiful because I got to get even more in touch with this. And I've gone to Buddhist retreats because wisdom is good. And they say Christ went to the East. So my foundation is Christianity and later conservatism, but I think that Christ without all the structure and layers of humanity would always seek and appreciate all wisdom. So I look for wisdom, in my life. That's because I'm a Christian, and that's my foundation. As far as conservatism, no, I got brainwashed in Colorado universities. I got brainwashed in Hollywood, and then I'm a 9/11 conversion. I was converted by a Buddhist hawk, Zen master, who just got me in a corner and beat me up and had me start thinking. And then I joined a book club, and years later I became the man I am.
Fascinating. And what do you think drives the left Most. It's a spiritual war against God. They want to make themselves gods. They hate individualism. They hate man for who and what he is. They hate God's image in humans. What is it in the left? They want to destroy God's creation overall, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Listen, I think they're lost souls. I think the more that our society, what is leftism? What is liberalism? I mean, the more that our society degrades to deconstructing family, to deconstructing the fabric of our financial system, basically, I think that it's deconstructive of the natural order so that the elite can determine the path forward. And I think that becomes from divorcing yourself from natural law and God. And I think most utopia, like 12% of the hard left is controlling the narrative of most of the party. We know that. And they've alienated, they say, about 35% of their party. And they are technically cultural Marxists. I mean, they want to, it's devoid of God. They know what's best for you, and you will take it, and they'll stay at the top and they'll leave you at the bottom. I think at that point, when you depart from the Constitution, I think I hate to say it, but that's when it departs into evil.
I think, look, only the Father knows when the end will come. But there's a lot going on right now which kind of is eyebrow raising, if that's a word I can use. When Jesus said it will be as in the days of Noah, there was a lot of things he was referring to. I am sure we don't completely know everything. Our brains are very small. But one thing I think that some theologians have argued is that the Nephilim at that time, how the fallen angels were tinkering with our DNA by having relations with women, that today we see these poisons in these shots that they're putting into people, and that could be very much changing DNA. This AI that's rising could be playing with our human creation in God's image. So we have that going on. There's something going on with evil powers messing with our autonomy in the sense of how God created us with our genetic code. And then when we're told that in those days there will be the mark of the beast, you won't be able to buy or sell without it. 10 years ago, we might not have seen that. Even 5 years ago, we might not have seen that. But now, with this whole globalist ID that they're even bragging about, and it's becoming very clear that very soon you might go to a store and try to buy something, and they're going to say, oh, we're sorry, here's your credit card, it doesn't work, you need to change your political views, it's been turned off. Something's happening along those lines, isn't it? That we can see a mark of the beast arising, where people like you and I, if we don't take a certain chip or follow certain party lines, we won't be able to go to the store or even use the internet. We can see that coming, right?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Like London, everybody's on the grid now, right? I mean, everybody is on the grid. And they're talking about in Oxford, you can't go from my daughter's there. As of this summer, they're going to have shutdowns, climate shutdowns, and everybody is on video everywhere. So you can't leave your area for the carbon footprint. The perfect real-time example. You're going to be locked into your neighborhood because of a false carbon footprint. Carbon is good for the planet. There's so many elements of climate change is going to be the next crisis because they burned out racism. We know that most of it is narrative. They burned out vaxism unless they create another bioweapon, and now it's climatism. So climate is going to be this lockdown situation. Smart cities, here in Venice, where I'm at now, we're in Texas. They just shut down a third lane on Venice, and the last one they just gave to bikes. So now we're getting like this massive cities being shut down piece by piece into less traffic, less lanes. They're trying to keep people together to control them. The smart city movement is real. The climate lockdown situation is real. The carbon footprint thing is real. The social credit score is real. The cryptocurrency by America, what the Bidens are working on right now for American currency, is all real. So it is definitely on our horizon. I definitely think that it could be stopped with another President Trump period. Hopefully there's a war between the left and right, back and forth, as we're supposed to diametrically have to balance evil and good. But you're absolutely, I love the way you think. And I will say, you know, one out of 800,000 people would have a negative effect to a standard vaccine. We're seeing 1 out of 800 now. So, I mean, I think there is a wave of death. And man, what's going on with menstrual cycles is real. What's going on with our with our mortality and our birth rates plummeting since the vaccine is real. I definitely think there's some dangerous elements out there. So I mirror it as valid.
Yeah, next time we'll even get into this atrazine. Like, you know, they say, you know, you put the frog in the water, put atrazine in there, it starts changing its gender, it turns homosexual or something. I mean, there's evidence for this. You just look it up. And this is in pesticides, and they're putting these kind of chemicals into the population. So something's going on along with the ideological brainwashing. Judd Dunning, what an honor to have you on the show. Lots of people sitting on the edge of their seat right now that may not have heard of you. And how can they check you out? Where can they go?
Oh, thank you so much. So JuddDunning.com is my website. I don't keep that as current, but you got some of the videos and some of our appearances, everything, and our book and our column. JuddDunning.com. That's 3 Ds, 2 N, JuddDunning.com. And that's also how you can get to me through Twitter or Instagram or Truth, etc. True Social. So, you know, it's basically everything is 3 Ds, 2 Ns, Judd Dunning. And please, you know, check out our book on Amazon. We have 2 new books coming out. I'll tell you about real quickly. One is called 13.5 Reasons to Love America and How to Stop the Angry Left and Preserve the America We Love. And really buried in the internet, as deep as why masks don't work, or that the climate is maybe not changing as much as we think, is that America is awesome. America has so many beautiful things. Now, they may have contaminated 10% of this deal, but 90% of this is still one rock and roll amazing country. So we're writing a book about gratitude and then exactly how they're attacking it. And so that's in place. And the other one we're doing is Trump versus DeSantis, the fight for America, the fight of our life for America, how Trump's the right man for 2024 and DeSantis for Florida. So you'll see those coming out soon, and it's a real pleasure to be here.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Judd Dunning. We hope you'll come back on the program soon, and keep up the good fight.
You're a gentleman. Wonderful conversation. Real pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Judd Dunning, for joining the Glazov Gang. And thank you, Glazov Gang viewers, for watching us this evening. Make sure you're subscribed to our Rumble channel. And after you subscribe, press instant notifications. And we'll see you soon on the Glazov Gang. Good night.